The first thing I heard when I entered my own hotel was my future sister-in-law calling me a swamp rat. She was about to learn that this particular rat owned the entire castle. The moment my boot crossed the threshold of the Grand Celeste ballroom, her voice sliced through the champagne-laced air. Alara Vance, my brother's porcelain-perfect fiancée, was leaned in toward her coven of bridesmaids, a flute of something expensive dangling from her fingers. Her whisper was a calculated weapon, meant to wound. Ugh. The mud-splashed cousin from the backwoods is here. Try not to breathe too deeply. Her friends erupted into tinkling, cruel laughter, the sound like shattering crystal. Alara didn't even glance my way. I was beneath her notice, a regrettable smear of poverty on the pristine canvas of her engagement party. What she didn't know, what no one in that glittering tomb of arrogance knew, was that I'd held the title to this hotel, the Grand Celeste, for the past 4 years. Every crystal droplet in the chandeliers above her, every thread of silk in the drapes, every inch of polished travertine beneath her ludicrously expensive shoes belonged to me. And by midnight, that venomous whisper would cost her every single dream she'd schemed for. My name is Rowan Thorne. I'm 32, and I was raised in Cypress Creek, Louisiana, a dot-on-the-map town where the most exciting event of the year was the annual Gator Festival, and the only traffic ever caused was by Ms. Claudette's escaped pot-bellied pigs. I left at 18 and never truly circled back. Not out of hatred for the swampy air and slow rivers, but because my family made it achingly clear I was the spare part, the rough sketch compared to their finished masterpiece. My older brother, Landon, was the sun around which our family orbited. The golden sun. My mother, Evelyn, had a particular gift. She could look at me and make me feel like a temporary visitor in my own life. If I won a science fair, Landon had won the state championship. If I learned a sonata, Landon had performed at the town hall. So, I packed a single duffel bag, boarded a Greyhound with $187 in my pocket, and decided to build a life where I couldn't be measured against anyone else. For years, they all assumed I was drowning in the city. They pictured a shoebox apartment and thrift store clothes, which was accurate for a brutal, beautiful while. What they didn't picture was the job I took as a night cleaner at a historic, failing hotel called the Gresham. That place became my university. I learned about wiring and plumbing, about hospitality and profit margins, about which silences were peaceful and which were bankrupt. I clawed my way up from scrubbing toilets to managing the books, saving every cent, investing in whispers and gut feelings. At 29, I bought the Gresham at auction. At 32, I run Thorne and Ivy Properties, a chain of 7 restored boutique hotels. The Grand Celeste is my crown jewel. But building an empire from dust teaches you the power of silence. Let people underestimate you. It's the ultimate strategic advantage. So I never told my family. They never asked. To them, I was still the feral cousin, the charity case, forever overshadowed by Landon and his comfortably mediocre career in commercial banking. The irony was a rich, thick gumbo. Tonight's invitation to Landon's engagement party had arrived late, a transparent afterthought from my mother to maintain the whole family illusion. I'd almost deleted it, but a stubborn, bruised part of my heart had driven me here. Maybe for closure. Maybe for proof. I stood in the entrance of my own kingdom wearing faded jeans, scuffed leather boots, and the faint, honest scent of cypress moss from my detour through Cypress Creek. My outfit was worth 5 of Alara's, but true wealth doesn't need a logo. You can take the girl from the bayou, but the bayou's resilience stays in her bones. And its earnings? They go straight into a very robust portfolio. I saw my mother across the room, holding court. Evelyn Thorne was undoubtedly boasting about Landon's brilliant match. Landon stood beside Alara, glowing with vacant pride. He had no idea he was the prize in a rigged game. Alara's eyes finally flicked to me, her smile as warm and genuine as a tax audit. She saw a problem to be managed, not a person. Perfect. Let them all think I was nobody. I'd learned the best revenge is a patient, silent predator, watching your enemies dance on the grave they're digging for themselves, too arrogant to feel the shovel in their own hands. I gave her a mild smile, walked to the mahogany bar, and ordered a neat bourbon. My staff knew the protocol. My general manager, Silas Grant, met my gaze from across the room and gave a microscopic nod. All was in hand. For now. Because in a few short hours, Elara Vance was going to learn a fundamental lesson. Never insult the alligator until you're sure you're not standing in its swamp. The party was a monument to Elara's taste, opulent, soulless, and desperately loud. An ice sculpture of two entwined doves wept quietly into a drain. The flower arrangements were so large they looked like botanical landmines. My team had executed everything flawlessly, which filled me with pride even as the aesthetic made my teeth ache. I found a shadowed alcove to observe. That's when my mother found me. Evelyn approached as if navigating a faintly unpleasant odor. Her eyes performed a slow, devastating inventory of me, sticking on my boots. "Rowan, you made it." Her tone suggested a natural disaster would have been preferable. "Could you not have worn something else?" The Vances are a very cultured family. She stressed the word like it was a foreign language I'd never grasp. "Came straight from work," I said, which was true. I just didn't specify that work meant reviewing architectural plans for my new acquisition in Charleston. She sighed, the long-suffering exhale I knew so well. "Just try not to embarrass Landon. He's worked so hard for this." And with that, she melted back into the crowd. 20 seconds. A new record for making me feel 12 years old and fundamentally wrong. I watched Elara glide through the room, performing affection like a seasoned actress. Her parents, Reginald and Beatrice Vance, stood sentinel, beaming with a pride that seemed strangely hungry. Reginald had the booming voice of a man used to selling things that didn't exist. Beatrice was a slender woman encased in jewels that clinked with every nervous movement. They looked the part, but something was off, like a gorgeous vase with a hairline crack. Landon eventually drifted over, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Hey, Ro, glad you came." He sounded like he was reading from a card. "Have you met Elara? She's incredible." "I've observed her," I said mildly. He nodded, already looking over my shoulder. Then he dropped the bomb. "Mom gave her grandma's moonstone bracelet as an engagement gift. Wasn't that something? Elara's obsessed with it." The air in my lungs turned to stone. That bracelet. Our grandmother, the only one who ever saw the fire in me, had pressed it into my hand on her deathbed. "For my dreamer," she'd whispered. "The one who'll build bridges." My mother had been there. She'd heard it. And she'd given it away. My eyes found it instantly, gleaming coldly on Elara's wrist as she tossed her hair back to laugh. A piece of my history, my heart, used as a prop. I needed air. Slipping into a hallway, I nearly collided with Reginald Vance. He was on his phone, back turned, his voice a strained hiss. "Just keep them placated until after the wedding. The Thorne family has the capital. I've seen the statements. Once we're tied to them, our liquidity problems vanish. Yes, just get through the ceremony." He hung up, smoothed his expression into joviality, and returned to the party. I stood frozen. Asterisk capital? Statements, asterisk my parents lived in a nice house because I'd been anonymously paying its second mortgage for 3 years. Landon's salary was modest. There was no Thorne family fortune. Except the monthly deposits from Ivy Holdings my mother had mistakenly attributed to Landon's shrewd investments. My anonymous help, my distance-keeping kindness, had painted a target on my family's back. The Vances were financial vampires, and they thought my family was a fresh vein. They were hunting a phantom, and when they discovered the truth, they'd discard Landon and leave my family ruined and humiliated. The game had just changed. I found Silas by the service elevators. "I need everything on the Vances. Business, personal, any news clips. Dig deep and quiet." He simply nodded. "Consider it done, Miss Thorne." Back in the ballroom, my new knowledge made the cracks glow. Reginald's forced laughter. Beatrice's repetitive, nervous touch of her pearls. Elara's smile, which never warmed her predator's eyes. Then Elara herself materialized beside me, smelling of pricey perfume and cold ambition. "Rowan, let's have a sisterly chat." She steered me to a private corridor. Her sweet mask dissolved. I know about the money you send home. Playing the pauper saint. It's transparent. Landon told me all about you. The jealous little shadow, always clinging, never measuring up. Her voice was a venomous strip. I'm marrying into this family. It would be better for everyone if you faded back into the hinterlands. Your excess baggage, darling. She patted my cheek and left. I almost laughed. She thought I was a beggar trying to buy love. She had no clue she was insulting the landlord to her own impending disaster. Silas found me minutes later, his face grave. He handed me a tablet. You need to see this. It's not just debt. The documents were a damning tapestry. Reginald's venture capital firm was a Ponzi scheme. Lawsuits, frozen assets, a federal investigation codenamed Kingfisher. And photos, Alara, but with darker hair under a different name, Elise Verano. The Fiancées weren't just broke, they were fugitives stitching together a new life with my family's imagined money as the thread. My phone buzzed. A text from Landon. Asterisk, can we talk? Something feels off about the Fiancées. Alara evades questions about her past. Asterisk, my heart ached for him. Too little, too late, brother. It was 8:50. Reginald was moving toward the podium for his welcome toast. I sent Silas a prearranged signal. Friends, family. Reginald boomed into the microphone. What a joy to join our families. Landon is the son we never had. As he waxed poetic about legacy, the massive screens behind him flickered. The romantic slideshow of Landon and Alara dissolved, replaced by a federal indictment header. The crowd gasped. Reginald smiled. Technical error, he barked. But the screens marched on, financial records showing millions in investor losses, a news article about the Verano scheme in Texas, a driver's license photo of Elise Verano. The room erupted in chaos. Alara stood statuesque, her face a mask of sheer terror. Landon stared, comprehension dawning with horrifying clarity. I walked through the parting crowd, my boot heels decisive on the stone floor. Silas's voice, amplified and calm, rang out. Ladies and gentlemen, the owner of the Grand Celeste and Thorn and Ivy properties, Ms. Rowan Thorn. The silence was absolute. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Landon looked at me as if seeing a ghost. I took the microphone from Reginald's slack hand. My apologies for the interruption. But I believe in transparency. I gestured to the screens. The Vance family are con artists. Their wealth is stolen. Their daughter is Elise Verano, wanted for conspiracy and fraud in 3 states. Alara screamed, she's lying. She's a jealous, filthy liar. Spittle flew from her perfect lips. I smiled coolly. Am I also lying about Agent Miller from the Financial Crimes Unit, who is currently in the lobby? As if summoned, the ballroom doors opened. 3 serious individuals in dark suits entered, badges gleaming. Reginald tried to bolt, but was intercepted. Beatrice collapsed into wailing sobs. Alara turned to Landon, her eyes wild. Landon, you love me. Don't believe her. She's nothing. Landon looked from her desperate face to the evidence blazing on the screens. The war in his eyes ended. He took a deliberate step back from her. I don't know you, he said, his voice hollow but final. The scream Alara let out was pure, undiluted rage. As agents led her away, she shouted over her shoulder, "You're still just swamp trash, Rowan." Nothing. I leaned close as she passed. This trash owns the ground you're standing on. Sleep well in a cell, Elise. In the devastating aftermath, I found the moonstone bracelet discarded on the floor. Landon picked it up, his hands trembling. He pressed it into my palm. This was always yours. I'm so sorry, Rowan. For everything. My mother approached, aged a decade in an hour. I showed her the transfers on my phone, 3 years of payments from Ivy Holdings. You thought it was Landon. It was me. I was always there, even when you made me feel invisible. Evelyn Thorne crumbled, true tears, not performances, streaming down her face. My girl. What have I done? 3 weeks later, the scandal had settled. The Fiancées were in custody, their scheme unraveling completely. The swamp trash headline was framed in my office. Landon came for a real visit. He walked through my world, my creation, with awe and shame. I spent my life looking right through you, he admitted over coffee. Can we start over? We can try, I said. And we meant it. My mother began the slow, hard work of therapy. The road back would be long, but for the first time, she was looking at the map. This morning, I hosted an investors' brunch. A young woman, Mia, arrived, the first recipient of the Thorn Foundation scholarship. She was from a rural fishing community, bright-eyed and overwhelmed. One of the investors, a pompous man named Crawford, sneered, "Is the help joining us?" I stood, my voice cutting the air. "Everyone, this is Mia Chin. She's the future of this industry." I seated her at the head of the table, right beside Crawford. As she shyly unfolded her napkin, I gave her a small, knowing smile. Later, I stood in the soaring lobby of the Grand Celeste, watching the world move through a space I built from silence and grit. They'll try to make you small for where you're from. Let them. Their disdain is just noise. While they're busy looking down, they never see you rising, brick by brick, until you own the very horizon they thought they controlled. The girl from the bayou learned to build on stone, and her foundation is unshakable.